Welcome to another episode of Diaspora Highlights. It is produced by the Diaspora Unit, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. This episode, we are featuring Narine Sookram, Guyanese-born Canadian. He is currently the host, producer of a phenomenal radio program in Canada called Caribbean Spice. He has received some 200 awards for his contribution and community leadership. Let's find out who is Narine Sookram.
I was born and raised in Berbice, Guyana. I grew up there, obviously. I attended, nursery school there, Boblin Nursery School there. I attended Newmarket Primary School. Newmarket Primary School, by the way, is located right by the number Signatory Beach in Berbice. So for those of you who may have visited there, will kind of know what I'm talking about. I also attended Tagore Secondary High School. Very nice, beautiful neighborhood, at least when I was growing up. And it still is, by the way. Had the opportunity, obviously, to, attend, do the things that we normally do growing up. We played the cricket on the streets and we attended temples. I attended a mosque, I attended, the Christian church and so forth, because everything is kind of like right there. So the values, the way I brought up, was very different, right? Very different in a sense that I understand what, it means to be a community or oriented folks. However, those times, when you have an opportunity, right? When you have an opportunity to migrate to see what the other part of the world looks like, right? People take those opportunities. Having said that, though, I was a teenager, so I actually follow along with the parents. I happen to be the youngest child in the family, kind of thing, and I migrated way back in 1993 to Canada, to Kitchener, Ontario. For those of you who visited Canada and whatnot, and if most people, generally speaking, will visit Toronto, I'm an hour from Toronto. So that's a little bit about me in terms of, my childhood kind of thing. I, however, ended up spending most of my life here in Canada. But one thing I can say openly here is that regardless, and this, it has nothing to do with just myself, people, right? All Guyanese, that is, regardless of their political affiliation, regardless of their beliefs and values and religion and so on. One thing I can assure all of you is that everybody has some sort of connection when it comes to Guyana, and especially now with technology, right? Sometimes we are more informed than you folks back in Guyana. I can tell you that much. So things have changed, but I've always been connected in Guyana. And I should go back a little bit too. When I was 14 years old, I actually founded a youth group, right? And the purpose of that group was to and it was not a religious organization per se, but the purpose was to really bring the young folks together, right? Bring them together to really, create opportunities, right? Create an opportunity where everybody can, have a voice, share their ideas, allowing everybody to be themselves. But it was difficult for, mature folks to believe in our younger folks, right? Because we are young and we have ideas and so on. It's difficult for people who have been there, done that, to kind of listen to us and so forth. And now as mature people, right? Because we have been there, done that, I think we have the tendency to kind of listen more and talk less, if that makes sense. So that's a little bit about me. I can remember fun times. I was 17 when I migrated here, so I have really good recollection, right? And so I remember, going to the beach, because obviously I was living right by the beach road, number Signatory Beach, that is. So we used to go there, at the beach and really, experience what it feels like to fly the kites, things like that kind. I remember I've made a box kite. It was bigger than me. And although we were young, we tried to put positive message on the kite, right? Things like, say no to drugs and all of these types of things, right? Because Chinese people are smart people, right? So we have always been creative in our own way, right? I remember all of that. Obviously, the Pagwa piece where, people will celebrate Pagwa together, every religion, right? Christmas time, when it's Christmas time, I remember you can smell the baking, you can smell a cake, you can hear, like the, we call them drinks, right? Here we say soda and pop and whatnot, but you can hear the bottle knocking, neighbors, whatever little people were able to afford, right? People exchange and people give you a little slice of cake, but I can tell you the feelings you get when somebody gives you that and you taste that, it is second to none. I can tell you that. I'm getting excited here just talking about it, but beautiful. I mean, I was educated by knowledgeable teachers. At least over time, when you see the teacher walking in the street, you're automatically fully you're paying attention, you're having that respect, you're saying good morning sir, good morning miss, things like that kind, right? Because that's how we were brought up, especially myself, and I'm only speaking for myself here too, not me putting my values in anybody here. I actually, a lot of people probably wouldn't know, but I, was very engaged in going to the temple, like, the Namaskar for Krishna Mandir, that is, and I was the assistant Hindu priest there. I was not a pandit, or so what people will call you pandit when you see with an Indian wear, but I was not a pandit, but I was assisting and doing the whole puja thing and things of that sort. But as I became more, become an adult, and I'm speaking for myself here, I realized and learned that, the true church is one heart. I believe and practice what I believe in, but I'm as open as you can be. So I come to a realization that, and this is just my opinion, I don't think Hindu is better than Christian. I don't think Christian is better than Hindu and stuff of that kind. I think we all have our own different values and we all see things, from a different lens. But speaking from a Guyanese perspective, I grew up really enjoying. I can still remember when I used to go to my Muslim friend's house, right? When they have their stuff happening. All Guyanese, they find a way to always cook when it comes to anything, right? We will go after school, we will eat, and all of that, right? So all of that are, really good memory for me as a proud Guyanese. I can tell you that much. I've always stayed connected, by the way, with my Guyanese folks. And one thing I would like to add as well too is that back in the days, those teachers and so on, they're retired now, but we flood Guyana with textbook all over the country, right? It was needed then. I'm not saying it's not needed now. Now we're more into the technology piece and stuff of that kind. So we have done our piece in terms of giving back. It's been part of my values, the way we were brought up. We had a very popular, we used to call it like a cake shop back in Guyana there, cake shop, right by the beach road, because we were located right by the beach road, always busy. We were surrounded by 3 different schools. So you can just imagine how busy that place was, right? And so at that time, sometimes, the pipe wasn't, you don't necessarily get water and so forth, 24/7. School children get very, very thirsty. At the end of the day, school, when school is, is all over, I used to set aside water and so on just to kind of provide those water to the kids kind of thing, right? Because that's how we were brought up kind of thing, right? I remember sucking off the pipe in school just to get water and so on. But those were all fun, good times kind of thing. I've seen people went to school bare feet, all of that. But it was not something where you kind of look down upon anybody kind of thing, because we are all, brought up differently. We all have different kind of support and things of that kind, right? Good question, by the way. So obviously, as much as I was excited, because at that time, very rarely people come to places like this, like Canada, with permanent resident. So it was an absolute privilege. But I have to tell you, when I land here, Huge cultural shock. There were not too many people of color when I went to the classroom, right? They were all white folks, and so forth. So I went back 1 year to high school just to get my anterior secondary school diploma. So I did that. But education for me has always been something I've always been passionate about, and for me, I've always been hungry for education, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons, Marcey. I'm still in school as we speak because I'm finishing off my doctor of social work. I think that when we stop learning, we stop growing. And so the good news is that for me, because I was the youngest child and everybody else was older, and at that time, that age thing was still a stigma. If you're a certain age, you're not married, it's going you, right? Kind of thing, right? So my sister, my brother and so forth, they find partners to get married, they found job, they move on. But it was only me being still a teenager, so to speak. I've kind of took that opportunity, went back to school, and I never stopped. Believe it or not, I hold over a dozen university degrees, and it is more of it's a personal value for me, right? The opportunities are here. I cannot deny that. And things have changed over the years, as you would know, and everybody who are watching right now will know that the way we used to do things 10 years ago or the way we used to learn is very different now, right? And that will change as well too. We can pretty much, finish off, a degree right in our own living room or in the kitchen now, right? And so things have changed. So, I have been passionate more when it comes to anything to do with, social services, human services, because that's how I was brought up in Guyana, obviously, right? So when I came here, I focused on the school aspect of things, but I also wanted to, do something where we are still keeping up with our Guyanese culture, West Indian culture, right? Because we also wanted something where we feel a sense of home, where we can, take that pride and say, hey, this is us, this is the culture I came from. And that's when I actually started the Dreams concert, the Caribbean Dreams concert. Originally, we used to call it like the Guyanese concert, but we realized that, hey, we do not want to attract only Guyanese here. We want to attract other people. We want to show them what we have. And so we've kind of branded it a little bit different. We call it the Caribbean Dreams event. And I'm happy to say that the Caribbean Dreams event is the only West Indian event here in Ontario to be named the top 15 here in Ontario, which is a beautiful thing. So we take pride in what we do. I know I'm going back and forth with that, but you asked me about the educational piece, but I actually, when you come to this country, ideally, Marcey, to tell you the truth, when you're young and you come to this country, especially 20, 30 years ago, in most cases, everybody's dream is to become rich and famous, right? You're young, you want to be rich and famous, you don't know any different, especially I'm first generation, right? You graduate from college and university and so forth. But when I became more mature now and so forth, I realized that, serving people is what fits perfectly with my values. And that's one of the reasons why I get into the social work. The reason why I get into social work is because it is very broad, right? You can work in mental health, you can work in policy, you can go in so many different directions, you can teach, you can do all of that, right? And at the end of the day, it gives you, satisfaction as well too, right? And so that's one reason I've kind of gone, that path, social workers are politicians and all of these things as well too. Because keep in mind, here in Canada, a social worker, you cannot practice as a social worker if you don't have your master's degree, right? So it's very different in other part of the world, right? You have to have your master's degree, as you would know, and many people who are watching. You cannot call yourself a social worker if you don't have all your credential in place and so on. And being a first generation, for me, it is a big deal. Most of my family, from my mom's side, though, they're all lawyers. For my dad's side, very small family. Mom's side, cousins and so forth, I don't know, they have like 20 kids all together and things like that. Very different. These days, as you would know, people have one or two. Two is max, right? So education, I've had the opportunity to study, and for me, it motivates me. If I am not studying, if I'm not doing a program or anything along that line, I feel lost. So for me, I find myself, I find my niche, I find my purpose, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, because one of the former president of Guyana had said that, when we stop learning, we stop growing, and it is so true, right? And so here I am, we're talking about it. Good question. Before I answer that, though, I want to mention that we also have, I started a radio show 20 years ago when radio show was not a thing, meaning that it was hard to get into radio and all of that kind of thing. So we use that as a way as well to promote, the Guyanese culture and, neighboring countries as well too. But one of the things we have been doing is, I mean, based on my own personal values, for me, when I give back, right, it is a very fulfilling feeling, and a lot of people can relate, right? And I'm in a position now where I can give back, right? I learned a long time ago that none of us live forever, all of that. So I understand all the basic, pieces in life. And so one of the things I find is that people, especially, in third world country, places like Guyana and so forth, there's always a need, right? It is not like we don't have need here as well, too. We have need, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But some of the ways that I've contributed is financially, we contributed, we will give back to the manders and things of that kind, we send back, decorations, when it comes to Diwali time and things of that kind. One of the things I've been doing most recently, though, and I'm glad that Guyanese people are open up a little bit more, because as you would know, now that you're doing a master, now that you didn't know before, mental health is a big stigma, right? But I find a lot of people are more open up when it comes to mental health, and a lot of people are reaching out, right? Believe it or not, and I will never mention anybody's name here, so folks don't get scared here. I am mentoring and I'm counseling professors from Guyana, because they've been affected as well too, right? And I'm sharing this for a reason, because everybody, mental health affects everybody, right? It has nothing to do with how much money you have. It has nothing to do with your status in society. In fact, the clients that I have, they're all, as I mentioned, police officers, professors, vice principal, and so on. It is not the person in the street. And prior to me got into it, I used to assume, and we should never assume, by the way, I used to assume that it is the people who have nothing, right? It is the people who live on the street, the people who, always get themselves into trouble. Not necessarily, but I've seen it firsthand, particularly with the pandemic, right? The pandemic, it's still on, by the way, people think that we still live in a pandemic here. It's just that we are managing it the best way we know how, right? And so the pandemic has changed things, in some cases for the good. It did a lot of good for me. I'm more successful because of the pandemic. It's a shame to say. But at the end of the day, we have to make the most of what comes our way. But that's how I have been giving back. I mean, when I give back, and I'm only speaking for myself, we never post anything on social media for people to be aware, for many reasons. One, we find that when if people end up thanking me publicly, we find that we receive a lot of emails. So far, we don't want that. That's one. But also, when we give, we want to make sure that we are giving for the right purpose. One of the things we've been doing most recently, Marcey, I want you to know that we're paying attention. We're doing things based on what you folks are recommending, right? So let's say you share your team, share that, hey, the need in Guyana right now is to try to close the gap when it comes to mental health, or try to close the gap when it comes to housing, or whatever the case may be. We pay attention to that. We are trying to making sure that we are very conscious with our own, self-awareness, right? Because I might have a passion to do something, because I've always been passionate about it as a child. The question is, though, what good does it do for the Guyanese people, right? So if we know that, hey, there is a need for a particular thing, we try to contribute in that area, because our idea is to not to put our values in the Guyanese people, and to the Guyanese people, I know, to those of you who are watching, we are not telling any Guyanese people what to do here. We are sharing our story. I know when you live a long time in places like North America and whatnot, you tend to see things with a different lens, right? So we're not putting, our value on anybody. What we are trying to do, we're trying to contribute in ways that are, that we see, to be making some sense. And usually for me, it's based on recommendation, right? So if we see a need, where, Guyana is calling for such and such of pieces, then we're going to contribute in that area. Because if we are duplicating, right, things that's already been done, we are not really serving a purpose. We are just doing things to really satisfy our own needs in that sense. So that's how I operate. And I mean, when you are a social worker, you get into it for a reason, right? You get into it because you're passionate about wanting to see policy change. You're passionate about wanting to see everybody has access to resources so they can live, an independent life and so forth. So that's why I kind of contribute. I do it ongoingly, believe it or not, constantly, so this is ongoing, right? And I can assure you, I'm not the only one doing this. We have Guyanese worldwide who are giving back, in their own way, right? The Caribbean Spice. We started at 2002, and the reason for that is because there was a need, to hear the Guyanese music, the calypso, the soca, and Guyanese, as Marcey, listen to the Bollywood pieces as well too. And so a lot of Guyanese West Indian people, they wouldn't necessarily listen to the mainstream radio because there's a lot of, you would know because that's what you're studying right now. There's a lot of biases when it comes to the media, right? And so when I listen to the radio or watching TV, I usually listen to the things that are not being said, right? Because we can be fooled. People choose what they want to share, and then listeners they don't know any difference, so they just hear and they just take it for granted. So that radio show was closing a gap. And that gap in a sense that people can tune into the radio, and the good news is that we are on a mainstream radio, right? And so people can tune in and they can listen to Guyanese music, right? They can listen to our story. They can listen to local Guyanese, singers and dancers, that lives locally here. So we use that platform for that purpose. And again, I want to say that that's the only radio show in that station to have received the best to receive the Sonic Boom Award for best Caribbean music and best world music. So that is a beautiful thing. So it goes to show that sometimes, a small initiative can have a huge impact without any question.
Is this particular radio show online, and what time can we get it?
Well, I'll be happy to share that, but good question, by the way. So people can listen on the dial. So it is not necessarily only an online radio. People can listen on the dial on the actual radio, right? 102.7, but that's for people who live here, obviously in Canada. But worldwide, people can listen to it as well too on radiowaterloo.ca. Radiowaterloo.ca. I'm on twice weekly, Sundays from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, that is. And Guyana and Canada now, we have the same time because times changed here recently. And also on Wednesdays, I host another show called Let's Chit Chat with Narine. That Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the morning. Worldwide, you can listen to it, radiowaterloo.ca. And for the Canadian folks who have, TV, Rogers digital cable and channel 946, you can listen it there as well too. So lots of different options. And we run it on Facebook and so forth at times. I'm rebranding myself, by the way. So, so we have kind of hold back on certain pieces. Rebranding is always an important thing because, I find that at this stage in my life, we have done decades of chit-chatting. That's how the name came about. Let's chit-chat and around that. I want to do a deeper dive now, right? Deeper dive with my experience and my education and so forth. And that's one reason we're stepping back. And sometimes in life, it is okay to step back. It's okay to step back a little bit to kind of figure out what direction we want to go, right? And so we're putting a lot of pieces in place, a lot of planning in place. So when we come back, you will see a shiner version of Narine. When you do things, right, and if you focus on doing the things that are important to you, when you do things that, it's serving a purpose, right, eventually it will come to a point that you've championed it so well that it will stand out, right? And I'm happy to share with you, Marcey, not that it matters to you or not, but I think it's nice to share to our viewers and listeners here that I've received over 200 prestigious awards. I'm sharing this because I know people, younger folks, in particular Guyanese folks, I hope that this will inspire you in some shape or form. And the reason, these things you don't plan, by the way, Marcey, you don't plan. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm a high achiever. I have lots of energy. And that's something I'm not sure where that comes from really, but I'm very blessed. I'm extremely motivated. I wake up early in the morning, regardless who's sleeping and who's not. I wake up early morning. That's how I start my day. Because I have a purpose in life, right? And so I realize that we have to act, we have to do, we have to plan, right? And that's how we will, achieve results, right? And so I remember when I was I'm trying to explain this award story to you, but keep in mind, it's going to take a couple of seconds here because it's 200 awards. Trying to summarize that. So I came obviously from Guyana, where attending school every day has been something that I've always done. It's important to us, I wasn't one of those that missed school and so forth. So when I came to Canada here, I continue with that same value, right? So at the end of the semester, the school gave me a certificate that says perfect attendance. I have never received, anything as such, right? But for me, it motivated me as an individual to tell you the truth that, hey, this means something. So we got this now. It will encourage me to continue on, right? Not that I would have done anything differently. And so that motivated me to kind of say, hey, I want something, so to speak, right? Because I was young, right? And then when I started my radio show, I did not know much about award and whatnot. All I knew that I saw a need to address a gap, right? And so I did that. And so at the end of the year and whatnot, they were kind of, and this is no like and share business, Marcey. This has to do a lot with the right people making this election. They understand ethics, they understand fairness, they understand equity and equality, inclusion, and so forth. And so when I received those 2 awards for a radio show, right, when I give it a good thought, I say, hey, there's something special, something unique about it, right? There's nothing for us to be ashamed of in terms of being, identify ourselves who we are as a Guyanese, because sometimes people are ashamed, right? People are ashamed to say they're from Guyana or they're from Jamaica, Trinidad, and so forth. Everybody wants to be Canadian and everybody wants to fit in, right? And I don't believe in that system, really. I think the world has changed and it's okay for us to be who we are, right? And represent ourselves well. But for me, with my energy and so forth, sometimes they get confused when they're offering me an award because they don't know if they should award. They give me an award for, the arts, an award for mental health, because I do it all, so to speak. But everything that I've championed over the years, I've kind of give it, my all, lots of energy. Sometimes we fail, but it is an opportunity for us to kind of continue on and move forward, right? But to kind of summarize that, I've received the highest civic honor here, in this city. Look that I live locally. So my name is the only Guyanese name, and it's not like bragging here, but more of sharing, by the way. My name is engraved in the city chamber here, in the city of Waterloo, the only Guyanese to have their name engraved there. Right? I think I'm sharing this because I want Guyanese people to be proud and be proud to be who you are, right? My name is engraved at one of the colleges. I obviously attended several colleges and universities, so my name is engraved. I will have to go visit them. Actually, I'm going there very soon. My name is engraved at the college for receive the highest academic honor here in Canada as well too. And though I live in Canada, I also received the highest academic honor in the United States from Brescia University as well too. Not that I'm the smartest person, it's just that I take my stuff seriously. If I'm going to invest my time and money, I give it my all. I'm not a perfectionist, by the way. So for example, when I'm doing my assignment, doing a paper research, I give it my all and I accept it for what it is. So I'm not going to, sweat it or anything of that kind. I pay a lot of attention to the feedback that are being given to me because I use that so I can do better when it comes to the next assignment. I don't fight 1 mark and 2 mark, but coincidentally, I've been getting a lot of A's as I become more mature. So I think it has a lot to do with maturity, and because you learn a lot when you are mature, right? When you're younger, you question yourself and all that. But at this stage here now, we already have so much level of understanding, knowledge and so forth, right? But when it comes to environment, I've got an award for making a contribution to the environment, right? The only Guyanese, or the only person rather, to have brought one to my home city, right? The Diversity and Inclusion Award, the only person, right? I've received the highest, award for volunteerism federally, right? By the federal government, the highest provincially and citywide. So I've kind of got it all in that sense, kind of thing, right? So that's just me highlighting. But like I said, these things comes when you stand out from the rest. So it is not a bad thing when you've been recognized for your hard work. I can tell you that, right? Because different people will see it from different lens. Some people might send me an email and say, hey, Narine, I've heard you keep talking about your awards, kind of thing, right? But I'm answering Marcey's question here. So after a while, when you gain so much knowledge and so forth, by the way, to add to that, I was named one of Canada's top 25 Canadian immigrants, right? And so what happens, over here, you gain knowledge, you gain experience and so forth. And so because of my engagement in the community, being a mentor, especially for international students, immigrants, around the world, right? I happen to be the first point of contact, right? So let's say somebody comes, and they're trying to settle in here. People wouldn't know what direction to take, right? They wouldn't know if they should start from scratch or should they continue on from their bachelor's and things of that kind. I can mentor them along the way to really narrow their focus and take them along. I do that on an ongoing basis. I organize community events. I'm a mentor for people. Let's say they want to, a lot of people, when they come to this country, they're looking for an identity, right? So apart from us Guyanese people, do know people are coming from different part of the world. And so a lot of people will want to form, let's say, an association that represent who they are, right? And so I will assist them to kind of really get started with the process, because the way it works here in Canada, very different in other parts of the world. The non-profit, and I want people to listen to this very carefully, the non-profit organization here makes a lot of money, right? It makes a lot of money in the sense that the government is encouraging non-profit, and billions of dollars has been set aside for non-profit organization, right? And so when people operate a non-profit organization, not a lot of people will know, right? So when you operate a non-profit organization here, people are not working for free here. You have CEO for non-profit making $500,000 Canadian dollars, right? And things of that kind. Because at the end of it all, based on what they're doing, right? It is really making a huge impact in the community. So what's happening here, the non-profit organization here in Canada, they take on a really important role to really better the country, right? So money will filter through, the provincial government, there will be a pot of money. When I say pot of money, I'm talking about millions of Canadian dollars. People will kind of compete for that money because they will put forward their own proposal, right? For example, I put together my proposal for our Caribbean Dreams concert. We're not getting millions of dollars here, by the way, and I'm not getting a salary. I do this for the love and for the passion for the people. But we also put a proposal and say, hey, the Guyanese community is growing, right? This is the impact, right? That's happening when we, have an event as such, right? And I'm very pleased to say, and important for me to say it here openly, that our event has been supported by the city of Kitchener for many years. We can utilize, spaces for free, but also cash dollars as well too. So young artists can be motivated because you cannot always get people's talent for free, right? People needs to be motivated. It takes, a lot of time for people to go and practice to better their art, right? And so forth. So, and the system here really understand it really, really well. And so, those are ways, and I've helped people. I mean, because of me, a lot of women are now successful business women. A lot of folks who were down to the last dollar are now business people, successful people, kind of thing. Because I always put people before profit, and that's what the difference is, right? Because a lot of times, businesses will be closed at 4:30 and so forth, and then you have to go back the next day, right? I don't look at my time if I'm with somebody, right? Because of my knowledge when it comes to social service and so forth, and as a social worker, I'm able to put myself in somebody else's shoe, right? And so those are the community pieces I do constantly. I mean, I do, I do speaking and guess, constantly at different places and so forth. Because when people see value in you, they want you to share the knowledge with their circle, right? And so I'm a busy man is what I'm trying to say to you, Marcey. So, I mean, in 1993, when I came here, Oprah Winfrey, I used to look up to her because I used to watch her talk show a lot. And I mean, things are open up more in terms of how the world sees us, people of color and so forth. But I used to be inspired by her only because I used to watch her show and so forth. And, when she shared her story as to how she got started in life, or when she brought guests and they shared the story as to how they get started and so forth, right? And so for me now, the idea was to really stay focused, but the idea was to, when you have an idea, right, whatever that is, and this is important to the people who are watching, you want to make sure you take that idea, you put it on paper, and it does not matter if it's at the back of an envelope, but it's important for you to write it down. One of the things I figure out, of my own self is that when I start to recognize my own potential, because keep in mind, not having parents and so forth who are college and university graduate, can be a little bit challenging in a sense that you don't have somebody to kind of say, hey, do it kind of thing, right? So sometimes you figure out things on your own. But for some reason, I always have this third eye vision. Like I always wanted more, for myself in terms of that educational piece and so forth. And when I realized that, hey, I can do this, that this is easy, right? It's a motivator by itself. Right? Because I always wanted to finish out my doctorate. I always wanted to do it, right? But it's a matter of having a balance as well, Marcey, because, you get married, you have children, you have other obligation, you're balancing between jobs. The pandemic came and so forth. So for me, when the pandemic came, I'm thinking, hey, maybe it's an opportunity for me to finish off my doctorate, right? I did deep research from top to bottom. I do a talk show, Marcey. That's one reason I'm talking a lot here, but I appreciate you really taking the time to listen to my response here. And so for me, it's about, like I said, recognizing, your own potential and so forth. And so when this pandemic came along, I did a deep, research to see what's out there for me kind of thing, right? And kind of when I dig deep and far, I found the program that was so nicely suited for me, right? The Doctor of Social Work, where it was not a one specialization where you specialize just, in leadership or research or clinical work. This one here is an advanced specialist where you specialize in anything. So if I so choose to work in mental health, then so shall it be. If I so choose to focus in a little bit of a resort, then so shall it be. And it fits perfectly with me because I get bored really, really fast, so having that extra knowledge to do certain things, it works. But for me, and you are not able to see, but all of my awards and so forth, right? I make them visible. Those are the things that motivate me, right? My frames for my degrees and so forth, they cost hundreds of Canadian dollars for one, 250 and so forth for one. The reason for that is because I like to invest in things that are important to me, right? I've never bought myself a brand new car, except most recently, but those things does not matter to me, right? My educational piece, me get up in the morning and look at all of my achievement and so on, makes me feel that, I'm realizing my own dreams, and this has nothing to do with nobody. This is me. This represents me. Like for my kids, for now, they might not see value in these things, right? But it is important to me. And I realize at the end of the day, we have to find our own niche, right? We have to dig deep into ourselves to find the things that are important to us, right? We cannot really try to be like somebody else because it will never work. We can use people's success as a way to say, hey, guess what? If somebody can do it, maybe I can do it too. Maybe not exactly the same way they have done it, but maybe I can massage it to make it my own. So for me, self-reflection, looking at my own self and realize, and when you get to a certain point, when you have a strong foundation, and you would know this, Marcey, when you have a strong foundation, right, then everything else comes easy, right? So that's that. The message I want to give to people, though, if you can get one thing out of this interview here, do know that every one of us have the potential to, to do good thing in this world, right? The key point is to make sure, and I may have said it earlier, but the key point is to make sure that you try to look into yourself to see the things that you are good at. When you wake up in the morning, you want to make sure that, hey, look, I'm going to do this because you're passionate about that thing, whatever that is. The only thing is you want to make sure that whatever you choose to do, you want to make sure that it doesn't harm anybody or harm society. But if you're happy with that, right? If your gut feeling is saying to you, hey, I can do this, I want to do this, this is my purpose, then do it. Don't be, bother or be discouraged by, people who might say otherwise, because we live in a world today where there are a lot of noises, right? So we want to pay attention, to us and to, the things that are, the things that matters to us rather than the noises around us. Thank you, Marcey. I appreciate you, and you continued the good work. Keep that smile. I was looking at some of your videos you have done. You're an excellent presenter, and so I recognize that, and I thank you for your time.
connecting with us for another episode of Diaspora Highlights, compliments of the Diaspora Unit, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. We invite you to tune in right here on our Facebook platform and the YouTube channel next Wednesday for another episode. Until then, stay well, so long.